live. Oh man, I can't tell if I feel like it says going live, live. Oh, here we go. And then it's like, I can't tell if we're live yet, but it looks like we are. All right. So I'm going to pop out the chat box in case there's anybody wanting to chat with us tonight about this super interesting topic that people seem to be really interested in. Polyamory and open relating. Are you ready yet? So I've got the Kirti on tonight, and she is a sensuality healer. But if you're a fan of the show, you know who she is because she's on every 2 weeks with me. I'm Natasha Edwina. My background is I am a licensed marriage and family therapist who has become more of a mind body health consultant. I like to call myself. I'm doing more coaching and a bigger perspective of health consulting, but my primary focus is still relationships. I work mainly with individuals and how to do their part to make their relationships healthy. I think, Kirti, you do both. You work with individuals and couples, and you probably work with more couples than I do, actually. And what is your background with polyamory and open relating? What's your experience with this, either personal or professional?
Well, personally, I definitely feel like my spirit was always interested in, multiple interests, like just was from being a little kid, always wanting to have close relationships with lots of people. Was definitely not physical or sexual then, but even just wanting to have, in little dance groups or having little pockets of friends, whether they'd been different. And like I'd have a friend that served, like my maybe younger Indian friends for the Indian community stuff. And then I had like friends at school, which was like my school friends, and then friends from my dance class. And so that was a different type of friend. So always had multiple groups where I had very close dynamic connections. And then in adulthood, I definitely tried to maintain that, but that really changes when you decide to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're just, now the expectation is like more of all of that attention you are giving is now putting into one relationship. So that's most of my history. But for me, what I do and what I've done is I tend to partner up. I've been in relationships since 16, and I tend to partner up in monogamous relationships, but that keeps me sexually active with one partner. However, it allows me to interact openly. It kind of is like a protection so that I can have multiple close relationships with guys who are friends. And, that's usually where it's really come up. I haven't had too many concerns in terms of polyamory and open relating with women. That doesn't seem to come up hasn't come up that much for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd say the first time I actually explored the idea of, could you be in multiple relationships at one time? I tried to do that on my own. It didn't go very well. And it was really an idea. It was, before my current relationship. And the idea was totally organic. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. It just happened. Like it was a natural attraction that occurred, and I just followed it. And then I didn't even know there were like communities and people who do this. And I didn't even consider or think it. I just thought this was a new, unique expression of mine. And, okay, I'm going to follow this. And then in my current relating, when we met each other, we were very honest already about like our attractions and relationships that we were in and things that we had navigated and what we were looking to create now. So we had pretty much decided to be pretty honest with each other about speaking, at least, about our attractions to either past lovers or current relationships, whether they be friendships or perspectives that were in the air before we met each other. And so we had already created that level of communication. And then when we tried to take it to the next level to support each other in the growth and evolution. We did try to do that on our own. And then we found out that that was also very difficult. And it was a struggle to try to navigate that on our own. That's when we thought, you know what, like, this is clearly a big part of who we are. And I truly do love my partner. And I know that he loves and supports me and wants, me to shine and me to evolve. They're like, we should just get the coaching. And if it works for us and we continue to evolve together, that would be amazing and wonderful. And if we decide that for some reason this isn't the optimal matchup, we don't even like saying that, but if that does come to play, like, we both really learned and grew from each other and got to invest in something we both care about that will evolve, like, our personal passion and purpose in life, like to help others. So we figure, like, let's go in this and go in it together. And it was really beautiful. Shout out to Progressive Love Academy and Kenya and Rakim Stevens, Juju Mama, and their work is super powerful. And we were able to work with them. And Shofar had known them from, almost maybe a decade and a half before, from the energy healing world. And so it was kind of a nice, pleasant reunion to, like, go back and work with them and get coaching. And then we just took it really seriously and decided, like, let's just do this as if we were really doing it and fake it till you make it, like, make a choice, make it right type of thing. And we went as far as it felt comfortable. When we felt like we wanted to pause and let it play out and integrate, we learned how to hold space for each other in the process, instead of it be like, fuck the patriarchy, like, we have to do it, or like, it's my turn. That was really powerful to let all of that go away. And it's not about that. It's truly just about honesty and communication.
Honesty and communication. I mean, that's the absolute necessity probably in any relationship, but especially when you're managing, like you said, on the one end of the spectrum, multiple attractions, which is so very normal. And any relationship is going to deal with that, to actually starting secondary, tertiary relationships or whatnot. And as I'm listening to you talk, I just realized how different certain people are. People are wired differently. They have different experiences. And I think it's really important to differentiate between, let's say, personality. And then, I'm big into astrology. So astrology would go into that too. And I've had so many astrologers say, no, you're monogamous. Don't even try to be polyamorous, that sort of thing. And I noticed even way back when I tended to have one best friend. And then I had my few other side friends, but I had the one best friend. That deep intimacy has always been so important to me, and to know that I got my, that person that's got my back. And so that's obviously an emotional style, probably, even though there's no sex exchange in those kinds of relationships, right, or the ones that I've been in. And yet there's different life phases, there's different things, but I think it's important to differentiate between personality and trauma. And maybe you can't be so intimate with someone because of trauma, or it doesn't feel comfortable, or you get triggered when the relationship starts to get really intimate. And so now it's like, oh, I'm attracted to other people, I can't be monogamous. But there's a difference between can't be monogamous and I can't get close to you because I'm afraid of being hurt, or this isn't comfortable now that we have to do the work, now that we're like down to reality and we're actually having to work through family dynamic shit that's coming up now because you are as close to me as one of my family members, and I think that's the piece that I see in modern day, current times get twisted so much. And I wonder, I'm curious about the intersection of things like video game generation, pandemic and lockdown, the skyrocketing rates of autism, all of these things that have been going up, that keep people from learning relationship skills and social skills and how to actually relate to one another. So a red flag goes up to me when I meet somebody in their 20s who's polyamorous, because I'm like, how do you even have the relationship skills to manage something like that? And to go against a counterculture, unless you were raised with that culture, and that's your relationship model or norm, and you saw, your family do it well, or whatever else.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like you're speaking to, multiple relationships, or as almost like an escape plan to, not have to deal with the shadows that come up from, getting deep in a relationship with a partner. And those sometimes like causes so much fear that we just like choose to leave.
Well,
And I,
not only the shadows, but it's family dynamics. So you have a mom and a sister, like I have a mom and a sister, and it happens a lot between women, the triangles.
right.
So now sister's pissed at mom. She calls you, right? Like, or you talk between the sisters, and then the sister goes back and tells mom what you said, but you haven't talked to mom. This is like these unhealthy triangles. This is what happens. It's like we can't have that conversation, or we can't tell that partner, let's say, what we really desire. Maybe we can't tell them what we want sexually. So rather than have to have that hard conversation, we just go find somebody else who would do that sexually with us, right? Or in the family, it's like, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to set a boundary and be assertive with mom because it's not comfortable. So I'm going to tell sister, and then sister's going to tell mom, and then mom will tell sister, and then sister tells me. It's just the same,
So yeah, because that communication dynamic is also like presenting how you're going to relate in general. I mean, I think that if you're going to step into the polyamory setup, and again, there's so many different types of definitions to it. I think that at this point, people, what I think is most ideal is like, I'm open, and I'm honest. I'm open, to receive like what is coming my way, and I'm honest with how I'm receiving it and what I'm going through. And if we can create a dialogue with our partners and our parents and our family members based on this principle, and it comes from a place of expression and love, I've noticed it tends to inspire others to do the same. It just has that magical power to it. I love what you were talking about, the sisterhood and the triangulation dynamic of what can happen when you tend to like open up your duet to a triad or more. And really what's happening is, this is the way that it can be understood is that, I feel that if expression is coming from a place of tension, like you're like, you're either pulling back your interests, or you're really expressing your interests, but it's out of a place of tension or force. Like your partner wants to be open, so like now you're okay, maybe I'll try it, or maybe I'll try to be open too because my partner, but it's not a real desire of yours. Or your partner is expressing multiple interests, but maybe you're just like, wow, like I'm just really into you, I don't have that need, right? Like there's that expression, all of these different expressions. If we are asked to do any of that from a place of tension, it's going to lead to sexual repression, period. Any expression that you are and that you want to be in your relationship, if it's met, if it's coming from a place, you're doing it from a place of tension because you need to, or for your partner, or you feel that you have to perform, or that you've got to show up in some way, it's going to lead to sexual repression. And I think it links back to what you're talking about with communication in the family, because it's just, again, when we have that dynamic as children, the kundalini is that creative force of the inner child. As an adult, that kundalini force actually becomes more sexual and awake in that sexual way, because as adults, if we're only activating that through sexual acts, well, that becomes our normal route to assess that place. That's why through tantric practices, we're doing things that are out. I mean, it's funny. It has this image that it's about sexuality, but really at the core, it's about sensuality. And really by the deeper levels we go into our senses, right? Then we can tap in to, depths. Like then we can use sexual connection in order to access higher points and deeper feelings. So the idea is, if you are repressing any part of your expression, and it's coming and you're it's coming from a place because you actually feel like you have to do this for somebody, it's going to lead to your sexual repression in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you are consciously stepping away or holding space or creating a boundary according to what you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're actually creating something with the sense of intention, not from a place of tension, but intention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now whatever you get involved in is going to have a space of expansion. So this means that depending on what person you are, whether you're a youngin at 20 who wants to explore, open relating and polyamory because you're like, I don't want to feel boxed in by one relationship. And I would like to also feel, sensually open and be appreciated. It's really not about the sex. It's about how the people we share our energy with. Is it repressing our kundalini or is it expanding our kundalini?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we know that it's going to be repressing our kundalini because we are not able to be the same. Like, you should be able to be honest with whatever you're doing. The kundalini functions off of like truth, with
Mm-hmm.
like stepping into your truth. Like, you're not fake ass busters. It's going to be a challenge, or if you spit a good game, and so this is a way to understand, like, what is your play in on it. And this is the thing, polyamory, if you broke down the word, right, it's like, okay, multiple, love, like the ability. And we talk about heart opening and tantra, we talk about all of that, but I think where it gets twisted and it becomes over sexualized is that as adults, when we think about multiple love, we literally think like, oh, that means that, like, as an adult, we don't know how to open heart without opening legs,
Well, yeah, I mean, I can go to the philosophical with a lot of this stuff. And I wanted to say, Chad's in the comments. He's saying peace, fam. So I would, if you're still there, Chad, I would love your input too as we go along, and to hear some of your experiences. Philosophically, I know that love has no bounds because, I have two children, and I loved the first one so much. How could I possibly have room for even more love? And then one more came and I was like, oh my gosh, it's even bigger now. Both of my love for both of them. So I understand how that works. And just seeing the two of them relate together opened my heart even more. So I think about that, I could see how that could work in a polyamorous relationship where, and I've had clients where there's two wives, one husband, one wife, two husbands living in the same roof, raising their children together. Functionally it works really great because one's at home and the other is still two incomes working. So, and they're all pooling resources. So that on that aspect, it looks great. But once you really get into the intricacies of it, it depends. It just is each person and their needs and whatever else. I also know couples that one is ready to open up the relationship and the other isn't. And it's kind of like when one person in the couple is tidy and the other one isn't. You kind of have to default to the safer comfort zone, which is a tidy house. The messy one has to kind of conform to the tidiness. And then the person that wants to be open kind of has to respect the boundary of the other person who's just not ready or not interested. Seems to be the way that it works. But I feel like you can love multiple people, but then when it does get to things like resources, like, okay, I'm sitting here like working and bringing in income and cleaning the house and doing all this, but you want to go on a date with this person. What about me? What have we spent time doing? Or, how does this work out? And I feel like it has to be very communicated and very understood that everybody in that triangle or square or hexagon or octagon or however many people are involved, everybody's needs are being met, because it is a system. It's not just like, I shouldn't say that, because some people that have open relationships, they don't want to know the partners. They just want to know they went on a date and that's okay. And they don't really talk about it. Everybody has different contracts, but definitely with any relationship, whether family, work, romantic, like you said, that open communication, that honesty, and like being authentic about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I know there are so many women that I've talked to that have compromised their desires and truly feeling monogamish, maybe monogamous, but also a little curious. But realize, they got burned over and over. They're getting burned by men who really are fuckboys, spiritual fuckboys, who are calling themselves polyamorous, but they're really just wanting to have their cake and eat it too. And that's things like getting another girl's number while he's on a date with her, and right in front of her, just to see like, oh, what's wrong with you that you're upset by this? It's because it's fucking disrespectful, motherfucker. That's what's wrong with it. Like, that's what's wrong with it. That's not it.
Right.
But because polyamory is like more trendy now, I would say, and
Yeah.
more open and acceptable, people are confused. They don't really know what it is.
Well, yeah, I think so much is up in the air right now. I mean, people, we've been seeing for a decade now, women are waiting to have children. Some women are deciding not to have children. Marriage, everything that's been traditionally acceptable is definitely up in the air right now, which is kind of exciting because it forces us all to be really creative. I think that when we talk about these subjects as adults, again, we just jump so quickly to, either the genitals, or it's about, the resources getting tapped dry, right? There's this ability that if any of these approaches in terms of opening up, it's not about, you don't, just because you say that you're in an open relating situation doesn't mean that you are like actively sleeping with a whole bunch of people. You actually get to define what you are doing with your partner, and you don't have to look it up in a book to tell you that this is what you are doing with your partner. The process, the true tantric process, is that when we both unwind our own false belief systems, when we learn about the masks that we've been carrying that make us feel that we have to own and attach another person for our happiness, and that we have to depend on somebody outside of ourselves for our happiness. Once we start to realize that, wow, I actually am the generator and the creator and the projector of all of this, and that like I actually manifested you to help me realize this. Thank you. And also it's like what naturally happens is it wants to be spread, and that energy wants to be spread. Now, in the infinite idea, like you said, philosophize, it is a gorgeous concept. We are born in human existence. And we are born to a land where there was a system, and there was a system of patriarchy. And we have generations of that, evidence of generations of it, and how we've seen, wizards and witches, men and women, and all those who lie in between, really get punished for having these beliefs. And so cellularly, there's also this fear and of wanting to, open yourself to the possibility of even, allowing abundance on that level to come in, because we've also been so brainwashed to think that it can only come from one person, and you have to marry him in court or her in court, and it's till death do you part, and they will provide the resources for you, and you will find a way, and you have to make this happen. But the truth is, with tantra, once you take off those masks and you realize that, like, dang, like I actually get to choose whatever I want to do, and there's nothing wrong with my choosing as long as it's in full alignment with my purpose. I'm helping others. Now we just need a system to support one another in doing that while we're navigating a romantic connection. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's really the first steps, okay, talking about it. Hey, you come home to your love and you say, oh man, they hired somebody new at work today. He's pretty cute. And, he had all the ladies were talking about him. Mm-hmm. And then I bumped into him, and he actually told me that I looked really nice in my dress. And I just felt so flattered by it, because here are all the ladies were talking about him, and he gave me a compliment. And to be able to come and share that, with your partner.
Well, I kind of feel like that's my work husband, or that's my work wife. It's like I've seen that. I've been in these dynamics where you spend so many hours a day with each other.
Openly accept that, that's the first level, is just openly accept it. And also, when you're openly accepting it, there has to be also an agreement in this type of society that we're in a beautiful world. It could be like, I don't need to know about, like, this is also my belief and what I've navigated. So I'm not saying what's right or wrong. It's what's worked for me, but I don't need to know about what you're doing. It's fine. Like, I don't want to know about it and da, 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 da. So for me, you know, the truth is actually like we are in a partnership. And everything that you are interacting with out there actually does get brought here and does get transferred here. And when we make love, what you're making love to out there actually gets brought into my being, because it's in your sphere and it's in your field, comes into my field. And now I'm working on transmuting that, and we're working on it together. So for me, it's like, actually, how can we create an open and honest way to talk about what you're looking for? And like, how can I help you get what you're looking for, where it turns me on too? Not where I'm like, have to be turned on by the other person, but I'm turned on because it's going down in a way that I actually prescribed and that I created, that makes me feel and helps me feel safe in it. Mm-hmm. And that could be something as simple as getting coffee with a coworker. Mm-hmm. And so many spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends struggle with you just getting coffee with a past lover, coffee with a friend that's of the opposite sex, coffee with somebody who you know is attracted to you. You know, this is real. And we need to just start with places like that before we even think about, you know, I'm going to go sleep with somebody else.
Yeah. And I think it's because sometimes these situations go from 0 to 60 like that. Maybe because of alcohol, maybe because
this is the American attitude. It's the hit it and quit it, fast food. When I'm done, thank you, man. Shit, like we promote like, yeah, if men can do it, we can do it too. But it's like men who are doing it are their purpose is wounded. That's why they're doing it. And they're doing it because they're trying to fill up the hole that we are here to fill. So really,
we are here to fill. Yeah. And it's not, a lot of it too, like what I learned in my program in marriage and family therapy was that affairs and these, again, unhealthy triangles, when, like, let's say you're spending way more time flirting with your coworker or taking her out to coffee than you are at acknowledging and being present with your wife, you're creating distance because either there's conflict at home or there's some kind of intensity that you are trying to, it's just like too much pressure, too much anxiety. So now you're trying to create distance, or there's already distance there. Right. And everybody's feeling now they're easily distracted by somebody else because there's not enough closeness. So, you know, that sort of thing. But usually it's the former, it's the former, whereas it's like too much intensity, too much like intimacy or closeness, or like, but more like conflict type. So it's interesting. And I feel like just to normalize this for people that are watching, we have about 6 people watching right now, which is pretty good for a last minute advertisement. Thanks y'all for being here. If your partner has cheated on you, you are not crazy for being upset about them going out to coffee with somebody that you know is attracted to them. That is a very normal anxiety. And you should have a little like light bulb on here being like, okay, what's happening here? Because there has to be trust there. And there's this whole point of like choosing to trust. And then there's patterns and noticing patterns of behavior. Has this person been trustworthy 9 out of 10 times or 10 out of 10 times, or have they been untrustworthy 7 out of 10 times? And now what's happening? And then, so I want folks to feel like they're not crazy if you're getting upset about those things. But if there's no history of that, or you've done the work and your partner has redeemed themselves and earned back the trust or whatever else, or they've never cheated, they've never stepped out, like what's really going on there? It could be like a past relationship issue that you're now bringing into this relationship, very common. It could be family stuff or whatever. It could just be a jealous, controlling streak, you know? So it's interesting to know, but I think a lot of it, even with the jealous, controlling streak, it's probably like an abandonment wound, you know, something that happened early on and you find this person that you really want to attach to. For me, my longest relationship has only been I would say 10 years with my ex-husband, but probably, you know, we got together, broke up, got back together, then got married. So that was 10 years, but consistently maybe like 8 years. And I have blinders on. when I'm in a relationship, I don't see anybody else. I don't feel attraction towards anyone else, not sexual attraction. Like, I don't know what it is about me, but when I'm like focused on someone, that's who I'm focused on. And I'm very like, I put all my energy into my family and my partner. Like, that's, I pour into my nest. You know what I mean? So I think that's might be part of it. Now, maybe 10 years is the thing. Maybe that's where the switch flips. And then you're like, oh, I love my partner, but wow, look at over there. You know, like, I don't know. But that's just me. I'm not saying that that's the way everybody should be, because I think that's unrealistic. It's just something that I've noticed about myself. Now, if I'm single and free, I'm like, yeah, oh, like head turned, head turned, head turned, head turned. Like, I'm noticing, you know, the energies around me. I can be a polyamorous dater. In fact, I recommend it for most women who are not attached, that they should be dating multiple men, especially if they're heterosexual, because otherwise they're putting too much energy into the one who's not sure that he wants to be in the partnership, you know, and then it's like, he's going to feel pressure, even if you're not even saying anything or talking about it to him or whatever else. And you can spread your energy around a little bit. And I don't mean sex, I mean energy, I mean attention, conversation, time, all of those things, until you decide who you want to really be with. But I know for me, I can only do that for a short amount of time, because eventually I start catching feelings for one of them. And then at that point, then I don't really want to, I'm not interested in seeing the others. Because again, I get the get the blinders. So in a perfect world, it's mutual, right? It works that the blinders come on at the same time. But it's interesting. And then, you know, now I can't really be a polyamorous dater, because I'm just, I mean, time, busy, you know, that sort of thing. So that might have been my old life. So again, life phase, it just depends on the life phase that you're in.
Definitely. I mean, this is such a vast topic. I would say if 6 people are watching and there's any questions that they have, this would be really a great topic to just, you know, pop off on questions, because there's like questions around if you know, for polyamory. I definitely think that for me in this relationship, there were some things that I did that really set it up beautifully so that I could be a sexually expressed woman in a relationship, because that was one of the things that I had dealt with in my previous 3 or 4 long relationships. They were all, you know, quite long relationships, over 4 or 5 years. And what ended up making me want to leave those was that it couldn't contain my expression and my sensuality and my needs and desires. And a lot of times I felt like my partners would sometimes be threatened by me being out there with that. And they would maybe be unfaithful, because that's kind of how the patriarchy set up. But had we had the conversation, right? Like, where I was like, yeah, man, like, your beam is bright, my beam is bright too. Like, what does it look like for us to both beam our lights bright, and like also love each other? And perhaps, you know, we're just trained to think that it always has to lead to sex, or there always has to be a sexual connection. But there are multiple ways to make, you know, sensual emotional exchange, or create creative love, and give birth to projects, give birth to business, give birth to money, give birth to entrepreneurship, you know. So it depends on how you think about love and abundance, right? Like, if we're thinking about relationship just in the traditional Western mindset of like, the person you sleep with, well, that's your sexual. For me, that's kind of like my sexual relationship. That's my intimate romantic partner relationship that I sleep with. But I definitely have, and I'm learning to develop like romantic friendships with men and women, that there's attraction, but I am not sexually connected. But that's because that's my healing journey. For me, it always comes up with my friends. Sex always comes up with my friends. And then it's like, oh man, we can't be friends anymore if I say no. And then I feel pressured. And I'm so dealing with being in my power about just expressing like, wow, I have a great time with you. And like, I'm full with our interaction now. I don't want to take it further. Are you okay with that?
Well, here's
that in the beginning, you know, that allows you to be in integrity too. And like this whole idea of leading a man on, or they were flirting with me. It's like, just like name it from the beginning. And then it's going to allow you to, you know,
Well, I think this is why I like the term open relating, because it really can be whatever it is that the two people or multiple people want and are creating, and working out those dynamics. And even if that dynamic is monogamy, it could still be open relating, depending on how you define, like your beams, like you said, how are you threatened by my beam? And Chad is asking the question, what would a woman need to feel safe and cared for in an open relationship? And I think it's kind of like sort of similar to like, what does and then he said, and valued and appreciated and respected. Oh, that's such a nice clarification too, Chad. Thank you for adding that. Always such a gentleman. Yeah, but it's like, you could say, what would a woman need to feel safe and cared for in a sexual experience? It's like, it's going to be different for each woman, I think, depending on her needs at the time. But as I was listening to you talking to Kirti, I thought back to my relationship with my husband. And when we first got together, before we were married, we were just dating, if loosely, if you want to call it that. He was in the Navy and he was quite young. And I say he was quite young because I'm almost 4 years older than him. And I had a friendship triangle, more actually more like a square, with him and his two buddies that were in the Navy. So he's in the Navy and I was having sex with him and dating him, actually technically dating his buddy too, because he kept inviting him on our dates without me knowing. I'm like, oh, I thought we were going to the movies. The three of us are going to the movies, I guess. But I actually got along really good with his best friend. So we had more of an emotional connection, me and his best friend, where we had fun together. We would go surfing, we would grill out, we would go ride bikes, and on the bay we would just do fun things together. And then I had more of an intellectual connection with his other buddy, who's his boss. They were each taking turns being in town. So if one of them was on the ship, then the other one was in town, and that's who I would hang out with. Between the three of them, I had my needs met, but I was only sexual or romantic with one of them. So when you're talking about this, but at the time I had my needs met, but I was not satisfied because I wanted that in one person,
right?
Which I don't think is unrealistic, but I do think it's a personal choice. What's that?
I said, I think that that's a program. I think that's the programming, that we are programmed to find all of that in one person, and in one person outside of ourselves, when we have yet to find all of that in ourselves.
Well, that and in your 20s, perhaps you can flirt with that, no pun intended. But it's like, once you have a family, now I'm a mom of two, I can't go maintaining three different relationships like that, one for intellectual, one for emotional, one for sexual. It's logistically.
Well, okay. I want to present you a different perspective there, just because I totally get you. And I think that there is a reality that's being created where we are so used to it being like, oh, wait, because you're in the masculine empowered role. But what if there was one relationship that made sure that your rent and your bills were paid for, and, made sure that like the business part of you and what you were doing, that relating, and it didn't have to be, if maybe that was the connection you had with your primary partner, sure, but maybe not. But if there was a relating where it was like this, you had somebody that was actually investing in you and actually easing you up and causing relaxation, instead of it being like, I'm paying out my energy, you can also see it as like, wow, I'm having return on my investments, where like the energy is coming back. And now see, in an ultimate open relating and honest communicating community. Oh, sorry. Sorry if I hit the mic a little hard there. The thing is that it's about ultimately that what Chad is talking about, that safety to be fully open, vulnerable, and free. Because when we're in the open, vulnerable, and free states, that's when we're actually healing, and that's when we're actually tapping into biomagnetic energy fields of evolving ourselves and evolving our relating and being able to tap into nature and do all these special things. But we need space and time to do that because of the programming and the patriarchy. So the ideal community, right, is where we're all taking care of one another. Nobody's even talked about genitals yet. Again, like, this isn't about genitals. This is like making sure that you and your kids are taken care of. It's like, okay, what do your kids need? And it's not like, oh, I mean, I can't ask you. I mean, that's like so much for me to ask you. Like, what do you have to do with me? It's like, no, like, sister, what do you need? And also going through the hardship of receiving help from people that, you're not sleeping with, that aren't your blood family, and being willing to trust those people, and like to trust a man you're not sleeping with, right? Or to trust a man that you are sleeping with. These are all dynamics that we just need to talk about. The polyamory piece, where now you are sleeping with multiple partners, that is a very graduated level of relating. In my opinion, that is a crown level of relating. That's when your relationship, your primary partnership, has reached the like crown level of existence. And I have a whole course about this. It's called Arousing the Goddess. And it's helping men and women understand that when we tap into our own feminine energies within us, our own passion, our own nurturing qualities, when we're able to heal, the wounded purpose parts, or the wounded masculine parts of us, with that feminine, right? Then we're arousing the goddess. And from that space, you can start to call in versions of your partner. Sometimes they come in as one man. Maybe when you start to work in, the abundance space, or the sacral. Oh, wow. The light in my kitchen just randomly turned on.
Arousing the goddess.
Yeah. when you work within, the sacral, you might attract two types of male energies into your field. Right now, I know I am in the fucking solar plexus and heart pathway, because I am attracting like maybe 3 or 4 male energies in my life right now that are deeply connected in very different ways. And it is completely open and honest with my partner. And so I know that I'm definitely getting there, and I'm in a primary partnership. But this is the thing, with each of these interactions, before I even allowed myself to go out to coffee, was the conversation talking about, that I have a kink, I'm in a primary partnership, and, I'm also really intrigued, and I love the way we connect. Are you open to supporting me, in healing my dynamics and relationship with men right now? Most men will be like, wow, I'm so intrigued. I'm curious. What does that mean? Well, what it means for me, this is me right now. What it means for me is I'm open to like romantic friendship and flirting. However, I'm not sexually connecting with men in my life outside of my partnership. And I would love to help pull in or draw in perhaps your primary partner.
I think you need to add that piece. Otherwise they're like, see ya. Like, I need to.
Yeah, some guys have been, I will say a majority of the guys before now, like, it's been that, like, they're just, wait, what? So like, this guy gets to like have you all the time, and like, I don't get to sleep with you, and this, then the other. But I will tell you this, when you're actually a pussy power person, and when you're really doing the aligned work, if you can carry the level of sensuality where you don't need to do that genital interaction, you can actually fill each other up. Because a lot of times what we're looking for with multiple interactions, it doesn't require sexual connection. The sexual connection and deepening does come from, I feel, mastering monogamy. And once you've learned the intricate details of connecting with the partnership and reaching different levels of bliss, and accessing the different healing modalities and the different shadows of each level of our beings, then we can reach the crown where we're like, wow, I am no thing. Like, I am an essence of being. Like, nothing you do could ever bother me, that is a very graduated level of being in this physical reality.
Yeah. And I think it's possible for sure. I just haven't seen it yet. It's like a unicorn. It's like, what does it exist? I haven't seen it yet. I love the idea. Like I said, I've seen it in a past life regression. I saw a society that operated that way. Also, to take it back to what you're talking about, is if your needs are taken care of and your financial needs or whatever, it makes more sense to have multiple lovers. That I can't remember which, if it's an island. I just remember reading about this matrilineal society where the women live with their families, and so their brothers raise her children, and her as the male, as a masculine energy. Her father, her brothers, her uncles are the ones raising her children, and that way, when she takes a lover, he'll stay in the household with her as long as it works out. And when it doesn't work out anymore, he leaves, but the children are always taken care of, and she's always taken care of, because it's the tribe, that's her bloodline, that takes care of the child. And so the men kind of just come and go, and she takes multiple lovers, and it's fine, whether it's one after another, or I don't know if I'm sure there's probably multiple at the same time for some of these women, but I mean, it makes sense. And what you're saying is like, does polyamory work in a patriarchy? It kind of gets twisted, it kind of gets twisted. And the thing that never made sense to me is multiple wives, just knowing the sexual responsiveness. Like if a man can ejaculate and then he cannot get erect again, and he's got 5 other wives, how's that going to work out? And women are like multiply orgasmic. So unless he's practicing semen retention and very good at it, like it just doesn't make much sense. It seems to make much more sense to have multiple husbands than for a biologically sexually insatiable woman, than the opposite. So I get curious about these things.
Well, yeah, I do think that, when you are ready in your relationship to perhaps, have more deeply physical connection beyond, friendly friendship, romantic friendship. Mm-hmm. And, now you've a lot, it should always come in phases. Like nothing should be like delivered like a Happy Meal. You get what I'm saying? Like you like if you come up with a plan and you're like, okay, wow, okay, now we're open, and all of a sudden like your partner comes home, like is like going on a date that afternoon, that's usually a sign that like, no, this is not the way. Everything is rolled out in phases. Everything must be checked in with. So that's why it's really important that before you even come into the phase of like actually opening up your physical energetic field with somebody, before you you're going to bring that energy back home into your primary partnership, I believe that the woman should go first. I think that we are so used to men having multiple lovers, or men, quote unquote, cheating, even though we know women do it just as much, but, it's just never quite as talked about the same, or it's not maybe just defined in the same ways. But I think it's empowering to let the woman go first, because in most primary partnerships, men don't even know. Like I have to say, most of the men that I've been with had never experienced being cheated on.
Wow.
Like all of the men I've been with, I can't even think of one man I've ever been with that's been cheated on. However, with me, I'm like, wow, like that's been the MO for me, right? That's an old story. I mean, that's not my story anymore. So in that case, this is why I think it's empowering for the women to go first, because it actually truly shows that like they're supporting this like flipping of the system. That one, we already know the history of a woman is it's pretty much like cattle. I mean, that is what it was seen, at least for I know my culture. And I know that most cultures, we all come from the same, where it was kind of seen as an asset, or, back in the day, to have a wife was like really to get your kids and to like take care of your land or do what you're doing. It wasn't really seen as that you got married, you were like, you were owned.
It still is. I mean,
by your husband.
We romanticize the idea even of taking his name. And I've always had a hard time with that. Like I couldn't even, I had a nightmare of a last name because I hyphenated, because I just couldn't see all of a sudden getting rid of my identity and then taking on his family name. It didn't, I'm like,
well, what's crazy, that's your father's name. So, I mean, the matrilineal has been being cut off. It's like just been father's name. We've just been adopting the male names over and over.
But at least I know my father, you know, like I don't even know his father. I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. And now I got his
That's wild. It's so true.
like,
Yeah. I've never, my mother and father have the same last name just because it's a common last name.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, still, I wasn't
like choosing your own last name to have together, you know, like we're creating our own family. We're going to be the such and suches, and then changing your last name. Like I totally see that. But I just think like, where did this custom really come from? And then even like the more I think about legal marriage, I'm like, it just seems so like, how do you separate it from the ownership aspect that it started with, you know? And like you said, cattle. And then we were just talking the other day about the song Build a Bitch, and you know, you don't get to choose these boobs, that ass, this eye color, this way of speaking. It's like, I am who I am, accept all of me, or you know, none of me. But you don't get to pick and choose. But that's what we do when we're shopping for, you know, a cow. Well, that one's got a nice rump. That one's got healthy hooves, you know? like is that really how you know, choose a wife of somebody that's going to like raise your children and imprint their personality, and that you're gonna, you know, share good times with or whatever? I don't know, it's just so interesting to me sometimes that we go through, like you said, this programming, and we don't really think about where it's coming from. But
it's most of it, I'll tell you 98% of it is coming from the programming, and it requires a lot of equal and opposite actions to unwind the programming so that you can really facilitate a safe awakening. But you know, if you are opening up your relationship because you just want to bring some kind of aspect of spark in it, like there are plenty
red flag.
Yeah, there are plenty of ways to do that. Most people are trying to save their relationships, and they'll find themselves at a cuddle party, or they'll find themselves, you know, all of a sudden, you know, going to some, like hiring some tantric sex coach that's, you know, advising them to do things that are way outside of their comfort zone, and nobody's working on the wounds that's actually just not allowing them to receive the amount of love that's available in their current partnership. That's really what's going on, that we're not able to just sit through dealing with our partner in detail enough. It's like, that's why a lot of the programs like that, you know, Progressive Love Academy, you know, they're working with couples that are together for 10 years plus. Because they want to see that like you actually are ready to do that work, and that you've also felt like you have tried everything, because there is that place of like, you have to feel that you are out of exhaustion sometimes to be willing to try something you've never tried before.
And maybe some healthy boredom too. You know, like I've been at those stages in long-term relationships, I'm sure you have too, where it's like, you've spent so much damn time with that person and you love them, but you're like, go over there, have fun, like bring back your excitement to me, or like, you know, or like, yes, please go hang out with that person. Like, I just like, this is, you know, we need a break, or what, not a break, but you know, like it's good to have other energy in there. Even like you're saying, friendships or whatever else is so vital to keep a healthy relationship. And I think people forget that sometimes. They think that, you know, oh no, it's not healthy to be hanging out with these people. I will say too about Progressive Love Academy in Kenya, because I do follow them on Instagram. I have mad respect for the fact that she says, I wasn't trying to be polyamorous while I was raising my babies. Are you kidding me? She's like, hell no. Like I needed somebody there. Like my body was going through stuff. I was going through stuff. Like I needed you home, like taking care of stuff with me. Like that's a lot of fucking work to be a mother, you know? And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for normalizing that. Because, and again, going back to, if we had a more of a tribal raising system, there wouldn't be so much work on the wife. But that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, I have 2 kids. Like there's no way I can manage all of these multiple relationships, for sure, in my 20s, but I didn't have the emotional intelligence skills back then. Even as a therapist, you know, that helped me. But in my early 20s, I couldn't even really speak honestly to the men I was with about how to, you know, give me an orgasm. So like, how am I going to talk about other people's orgasms with him? You know what I mean? And all these other things, that it just takes time to be able to talk about these things. And so it's very, there's so many different layers to this issue. And I think whether this is what wraps things up, because I know it's 7 after 9 and we both have an early morning, or not, it's like, please proceed cautiously as you're going through this. Like I hear you saying, move slow, go in phases, get a fucking coach, like hire somebody to help you through this. Get really good with communication. Don't just like meet somebody new and be like, yeah, let's try polyamory. That's called dating. That's just call it what it is dating. It's not a polyamorous relationship. If you're really going to navigate that, I feel like you have to have a guide, because I feel like even to navigate a healthy monogamous relationship, you need a guide. I have clients that I work with once or twice a month for years, just for maintenance. We're not doing any deep work, but we're just keeping the engine clean, and doing the regular oil changes. And I think that's so important if you want a healthy, long-term, successful relationship. And on that note, I also want to give you a chance to answer Chad's question if you're interested, because I know I gave a very brief answer, but what would a woman need to feel safe and cared for and valued and appreciated and respected in an open relationship? Is there anything you want to add, maybe to close this episode down? And we can always do a part 2, but
yeah, I think there's definitely a part 2. I mean, I think there should be maybe also just like, what would be some steps to starting that conversation, if men and women are looking for that, or even communities. What is it?
Or you can just buy her course.
I mean, if you're really driven, yes, I'd say come and let's do it. We can start that process. And really, I'll tell you what the biggest thing is: working with couples and helping them understand. Like, they think that they're ready for open relating, but what ends up happening is like they fall deeper in love with each other.
Yeah.
Because we do so much deep work that they're like, oh my God, now I understand why I was like seeking. Yeah. And, I always tell Shofar, it's like this beautiful thing that happens where it's like, first, you see your lover in everybody and you're like, wow, like I love them too. And I love them too. Like I see my love, like that. And then all of a sudden you just start to see everybody in your lover, and it's like, shit, that's what we're playing with, is those two concepts. And that's what we want to do. So Chad's question of what does a woman need to feel safe and seen and respected, in an open relationship? I think one, in today's society, especially in today's Western culture that we're here, and as an American, or as a United woman of the United States, or North America, I think that to feel safe, a woman has to feel like she's honored as the queen in the primary partnership, that ultimately everything that's happening is because she is safe and allowing it to happen. If it's, if it's Chad, if it's your request, let's just put you in the example. I'm not assuming that this is what you're dealing with, but just so we can use that as an example, that, if it's your request to really, really have your partner feel just so special and amazing because she is willing to, open the space, that puts her immediately up in the queen role. And I think that most of the times why this stuff usually falls apart is because the person who goes, quote unquote, out, or is in the expansion mode of like expanding their interests, the other partnership can sometimes, all of their self-worth stuff comes up. And so it's really important to deal with that, each person's self-worth, that so that you can make sure, because for some women it's like, hey, as long as like you are making love to me every night, or like we're having our special day out in the woods that we do, like I'm okay. Like we don't have these conversations. We make assumptions based on Hollywood movies and our parents' relationships and different things that we've seen. Oh, God forbid, I hope you're not making your decisions based off porn. But, it's important to just have the conversation with your love. Like, what do you need to feel safe? Like, for me to even be attracted to another woman, like, what would make you feel safe in that? Would you be okay? And like, what comes up for you? Making sure that they feel like the most important, and really a commitment to a primary partnership. Every woman deserves a king. I believe this. every woman deserves her king, and every king deserves to be chosen as such. And from that place of royalty understanding, you can start to, build the court.
Mic drop. I love the sound effects too. It was perfect.
I'm so like move my hands and it's to the sides.
I loved it. Oh man, I think I was getting hypnotized there for a minute. It's you spend enough time with Kirti, you're just start going into trance. A couple minutes with her. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like that's it. It's like that's what comes up with people all the time with polyamory is the self-worth. I'm not being chosen, I'm not the queen, I'm not the king. And I think there's going to be times when clearly that woman knows she's not the primary partner, and she might be okay with that. She might be between relationships. She might be like really into her career and doesn't have time for like a full-blown relationship, but talk about these things and
yes,
get to the bottom of this. Chad saying, thank you, Queen Kirti. Yeah, but I think that is a desire. And I think back to, I always reference Mama Gina because I've read her books and taken her course or whatever, but she trained a lot with the energy healers and the Tantra people and the Tantra communities too. And, she says that even with the pussy, like it just loves attention. It loves to be watched. That's the yoni gazing. It's like, why do we yoni gaze? Because you could just watch it fluff right up just by putting your attention and your energy on it, right? And that's the feminine too. It's like she wants to be the queen. She wants to be admired. She wants to be adored. She wants to be worshipped. She wants to be seen. And that is so much of the attraction. That is so much of the turn on. That is so much of the foreplay before you even.
And let me just add to that, Natasha, because you're tapping right into the concept of polyamory. And what happens is when we are able to do that without touch, when we're able to do that energetically, like see and gaze and allow each other to like experience and imprint one another's fields of energy. And when we're able to do that, it's like you actually adding a kiss is like, oh, okay, it's a cherry on top, really. But the real connection is that like somebody is seeing you.
That's it.
Like touching you, it feels good. It's nice. And so that's why what we see happen where like you have these big groups of folks who are all loving each other and they have agreements in terms of, their interactions and, communities that are, sexually active with each other. Well, I've seen both sides. I have to say, like, I've seen the side where it's just like really mature and it doesn't feel like a fuck fest. It feels actually really evolved and everybody is free and wild and undomesticated, but it is respectful. It feels like integrity. I've been in those settings. And I've also been in the settings where it feels like it's all an excuse to just get laid. And like what you talked about, spiritual fuck boys and fuck girls. And it's
steps. They don't want to do the groundwork. It's like,
there you go.
Creation. They don't want to go to the source, the root. They don't want to put the time in. They just like, I'm a coach. I just took a weekend certification.
You got it. And that's the thing. I work with a lot of people who are surviving tantric community members. I work with a lot of broken hearts from open relating and tantra philosophy, and I'm trying to bring back the divine feminine qualities there, like, because they're utterly confused because it can fuck with you. It can really fuck with your creative force when it's still being manipulated. And anything that's fast, right? We always, that's the red flag piece, but we've seen them both. There's broken hearts communities and there's communities that are thriving. I think first and foremost, you've got to figure out about the conditions you're placing on yourself to love yourself completely. Then you can start working with your partner. Then you guys do that work together. And once you start doing that so well, you just start to beam in the people that naturally resonate with where you're at. And like when it wants to be sexual and beyond sensual, when it wants to be sexual, it presents itself in such a beautiful, rich, organic way that it's almost just like, oh, the flower is opening. It's not like I'm adding fertilizer and I'm like stringing, I'm going to add,
when is it gonna open?
I'm going to add string to the petals. Everybody crank it. Let's open up the blossom. It's not like that. It's just like, wow, it's like already the love exchange is so deep between you two. It's that like if it was to happen, it could feel as friendly as a handshake because it's just so fucking deep.
Well, and then we get into that too, like how can be like really seeing people, and that's what I talk about. Like flirting is just offering sunshine to somebody's day. The grocery store. Like I always say, you can flirt with a baby. You're just creating a little playfulness and connection. Eye contact, jokes, humor, whatever, to just brighten somebody's day. And it doesn't have to be sexual. It doesn't have to go there. And I feel like that's what you're talking about too, with being seen and really seeing people and offering people that those energetics. And it feels good. It feels clean. And people can, you can go to a party. You could go, for me, it's also my dance studio. I am fully seen there. I am fully accepted. I can take all of that juice home and I'm like revved up, right? Just from being seen. And there's nothing, I mean, it is sexual, it's sensual dancing, it's sexual, but there's no sexual interactions between any of the people there. But it's just this gift of being fully seen. And you can have that in a friend group and it can be totally clean. When are we in a situation where now a woman's like, oh, that felt really creepy? It's because it wasn't selfless. It wasn't there was an agenda, and she can feel it instantly. And then you see guys that get confused about this, like, but I didn't do anything different than he was doing. She felt your intention. She felt your energy. That was the difference. And then there's a problem, right? And so it's like, it doesn't, and this is, I think, why women sometimes don't trust their partners in these open, maybe relating spaces, because there's always a guy that comes in to a group like this and does that. And he can't just hang and watch the flower open and watch the vibes and appreciate it for the beauty of the experience. He has to turn it into something.
Yeah, he's got to open the cocoon before the butterfly is ready, and then
get it. Or there's like 5 other people, I better get it for me. Whatever it is, it's just very interesting. So I don't know. There's a lot more to unwind and a lot more to talk about, but I really like that concept of open relating and how you can practice it. What's the word? Platonically, or I like your term romantic friendship too. And I feel like that could be like a whole show topic too, really defining what that means.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it's been an interesting navigation process. Trying to facilitate romantic friendships, especially when so many of the men that are available to me are like, they're like my close friends. And that's also has to be a conversation with my current partner. If like I talk to him about, okay, well, like certain men are going to be, of course, off limits, but all of those men are like the men in my circle. So for me to like, okay, what does it look like for me to like, have my beam stretch out, and like, how can my heart call in connections that are from outside? And and I'm telling you, it's wild. The magic is real, because just like that, it's like, they just pop in and it's like, oh, wow, the timing, but it's because it's aligned. And it's coming from a place like where, again, the flower just opens and the availability is there, so it has to be patient. And so, I think romantic friendship, I think just what open and honest communication looks like. I know you have protocols, I have protocols. And I would just love questions around all of this, because that's when you get into the nitty gritty of what it really is, when people are able to ask questions.
Yes, exactly.
We can tap into some stuff.
Oh, okay. So how about this for our next show, which is in 2 weeks? I think we should have a guest on, we'll see if somebody's willing to come on and ask some questions. You don't even have to have your camera on if you don't want. But so calling out, can you stretch out your beam for a show guest? Because does that work too? Beam them in, Kirti.
Okay, a show guest.
Beam in a show guest.
Calling it in, yes.
Yes, if you're watching this now and you want to come on live with us and ask us some questions about open relating, romantic friendships, polyamory, and by us, I mean Kirti. No, I'll pop in there too. You know, I'm opinionated. But it would be super fun. And also, if you don't want to be on the show, just comment here on YouTube, comment on Instagram. I posted this on Instagram, a little promo. I've been trying to do little clips too. Tell me your experiences. DM me on Instagram, send me an email, whatever. Find me, hunt me down, and ask your questions so that I can bring them to our next show, because I think this is a really rich area to get into these days, because we are both in the business of healthy relationships, healthy partnerships, because we know that the dynamics and the potential and the energy created between those really healthy, juicy, lovely partnerships completely blast out to the planet and can change, and we can start to recreate this humanity, this society in the way that we always dreamed that it could happen. So I believe this is possible. Maybe not in our lifetime, maybe it is. There's a lot of change happening right now. So we'll beam that into. So thank you everybody for joining. Kirti, we did it under 2 hours. We didn't hit our goal, but it's hard. It's always hard when I get together with you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chad, for piping in. Really appreciate your presence and making your presence known here. And we will see you all next week for another episode. And then Kirti will be back in 2 weeks.
All right. Peace.